Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Before Coffee. It is Wacky Wednesday. So what wacky stuff has been going on in the past few weeks that we haven't covered? We're going to cover it today. Let's start with our headlines. Today on Before Coffee, Czechs fundraise gift for Putin to arm Ukraine against Russia.
And Trump co-defendant has a bail hearing, and Elon Musk sues over free press. But in a real big story, New Zealand picks a national bird thanks to John Oliver.
Dutch archive piece sheds new light on Shakespeare's Prince murder.
And the Kennedy presidential limo has been on permanent display in Michigan for decades.
Who is the sexiest bald man alive? 2023. And where is Stanley Tucci?
Those stories and more on November 22nd, 2023, National Taiwan Day on Before Coffee.
Okay, first news story. Remember the Ukraine war? Well, that's also still going on, along with Sudan and the genocide in the Congo. So, what are the Czechs doing to help fundraise money for Ukraine? This is from Euronews with AFP. Millions of euros have already been collected by the initiative supporting Kyiv's war effort. A Czech crowdfunding project is raising money for a gift for Putin that will arm Kyiv. So far, the initiative has raised 23 million euros from more than 188,000 donors to purchase a tank, rocket launcher, mine clearance system, drone, and munitions for the Ukrainian army. This comes from as fears grow that the West is growing weary of providing support to Kyiv in its war against Russia. Foreign donors have provided 8% of the money collected, with the initiative promoted in 6 languages. The Czech site also sells t-shirts mocking the Russian president and other gifts to galvanize donors. Led by former TV editor Martin Odrasek, the project wants to raise enough money to buy a Black Hawk helicopter worth an estimated 3.6 million euros. They just sell that stuff in public market, I guess. Hey, one Black Hawk available. We want to tell the world that Ukraine needs these things, says the 53-year-old Martin. It was also an attempt to put the pressure on. According to him, supplies delivered by Kyiv by the fundraiser have had a ripple effect on Western governments. 3 months after the Czech initiative financed an assault tank for Ukraine, the Netherlands and Denmark signed an agreement providing 10 armored vehicles from the Czech Republic to Kyiv, he explained. The same thing happened after we sent an anti-drone system, added Odrasik. And we know that the American army has thousands of Black Hawks, so if they get one Black Hawk that they buy themselves, America would be like, well, since you already have one, here's 20 more. I guess that's the argument. The Czech government has provided Ukraine with significant humanitarian and military aid, as well as hosting around 500,000 Ukrainian refugees. But this support is waning. Odrasek fears Western European countries will tire of supporting Kyiv and its war effort. They really shouldn't, because they're a buffer country. If Ukraine gets taken over by Russia, the EU is next. While part of Czechia experienced significant political repression, restrictions on personal freedoms, and economic hardships when it was ruled by the communists under Moscow control from 1948 to 1989. Famously, as a satellite state, Czechoslovakia was one of the only republics. It was already a republic even during its satellite state status. That's what's special about it as a satellite state. And that control was from 1948 to 1989. The minimum donation to the campaign is 1968 crowns or 80 euros, referring to the repression of liberal Prague Spring movement by the Soviets in 1968. That's so clever. Gift for Putin originated from a crowdfunding campaign led by the Ukrainian embassy in Prague, which had dazzling success, raising nearly 2.3 million euros at the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine on the 24th of February, 2022. The pace of donation has slowed since then. After the first 3 days of the collection for the Black Hawk, the counter is around 366,000 euros. The atmosphere within society has changed in a year. The money arrives more slowly, says Odrasic, hoping to raise the sum required for the Black Hawk in 150 days. The TV editor, who has hosted a Ukrainian family in his second home since the start of the war, has visited Ukraine several times. I'm really looking forward to going back there at the end of the war with my wife and for a long vacation. And maybe to help rebuild because the whole place is in ruins, but that is the update here. Go donate your 80 euros, I guess, to buy funny photos of Putin dressed as like an air pilot, and I think he's on one of those Russian dolls. That's the picture they show of some of the things they're selling that with Putin on his face, or defacing him, I guess, in a way. All right.
Putin has his troll farms.
Yeah. Your story.
Okay, and more fascism on the March news. We have Trump co-defendant. We're going to cover these stories briefly. A judge on Tuesday ordered this is from, by the way, I'll give him credit. This is from NBC News, Summer Concepcion and Charlie Gile. Judge on Tuesday ordered bond conditions of Harrison Floyd, one of former President Trump's co-defendants in the Georgia election interference case, to be modified because of social media posts that prosecutors from the Fulton County District Attorney Office said were intentional and flagrant violations of the conditions of the release. Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee said the post may have been a technical violation of Floyd's bond, but not every violation compels a revocation. He said that the current bond order does address the nuances of social media and that he didn't see Floyd's post as witness intimidation. I want to read these as seeing these more that someone is wanting to defend his case very public way. Fulton County District Attorney Fonnie Willis had argued that Floyd should be locked up immediately for his social media posts about witnesses in the case, including former election worker Ruby Freeman, and made it clear that the judge was disappointed. She was disappointed in the ruling. Obviously, you're very concerned about the safety of Ms. Ruby Freeman. She has clearly endured enough, and this conduct is just chilling to her, but chilling to other people, not just chilling to her, but chilling to other people who want to serve in her capacity. McAfee signed off on the temporary modified bond order after the hearing with more explicit restrictions on Floyd's posts until two sides can agree on more specific language. In a motion filed to revoke Floyd's bond, Willis offices cited Floyd's posts on Twitter targeting Georgia's elections officials such as Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, one of the top officials, Gabrielle Sterling, and Freeman. We are asking for his bond to be revoked and remanded, Willis told McAfee at the start of the hearing. Her office called three witnesses, including Sterling. But his bond wasn't revoked. He would just get put on stricter terms. And other fascism on the March story, pro-Nazi posts next to Apple ads. Elon Musk sues Watchdog for its damning report. So Elon Musk doesn't like the fact that Media Matters pointed out that he puts pro-Nazi propaganda next to ads for IBM, and they just pop up randomly, he claims. But since Media Matter put a picture up of the ads side by side, IBM and others hold their advertising on Twitter, which is turning into, Nazi propaganda channel. After a devastating advertiser exodus last week involving some of the world's largest media companies, ex-owner or Twitter or whatever it wants to call it, Elon Musk is suing the progressive watchdog group Media Matters over its analysis, highlighting anti-Semitic and pro-Nazi content on X. A lawsuit filed Monday accuses Media Matters of distorting how likely it is for ads to appear beside the extremist content on X, alleging that the group's testing methodology was not representative of how real users experience the site. The lawsuit marks the latest example of how Musk's favored response to his critics and seeks to direct blame for advertiser backlash on the third-party groups. after Musk in the same week publicly endorsed the anti-Semitic claim that Jewish communities push hatred against whites. So he is getting his friendly attorney generals in Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who's a criminal, and Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey, who I have never heard of, posted on X that his office is also investigating media matters next to which Musk responded. Great. Media matters? This is a frivolous lawsuit meant to bully X's critics into silence. Media matters. Angelo Carosone said, Media Matters stands behind its reporting, looks forward to winning our court. Basically, this is a frivolous lawsuit. There's no chance. You cannot sue people for reporting things that happened. This happened. Sorry. Also, finally, getting to the weird part of the news. This is from Reuters. Puking bird wins New Zealand bird competition after John Oliver campaign. The Putukatiki bird, I'm sure John Oliver said it better, a bird that pukes, grunts, growls, and has bizarre mating rituals, won New Zealand's Bird of the Century title in a competition where America's British comedian John Oliver's involvement had ruffled some local feathers. The Bird of the Year competition, billed Bird of the Century in 2023 to celebrate the environmental organization's Forest and Bird Century, is an annual event where people vote on their favorite New Zealand bird. In 2023, the American-British comedian Oliver exploited a loophole in the system that allows anyone to vote from anywhere for a bird. Taking on the role as a campaign manager for the burnt orange mulleted Putekateki, Puteketeke. Oliver asked people to vote for the bird on his weekly show, appeared on Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, promoted and erected campaign signage in capitals. Campaign managers for other birds calling on New Zealanders to get involved and vote for other birds, including the cockapoo parrot and the national bird, the kiwi. Of course, why wouldn't it be the kiwi? We promised controversy, but didn't quite expect this. We're stoked to see the outpouring of passion, creativity, and debate that this campaign has ignited, said Nicola Toki, Chief Executive of Competition Organizer Forest and Bird. As a response to perceived American interference in the bird election, New Zealanders turned to the polls in force. The competition received a record more than 350,000 verified votes from 195 countries, crashing the verification system and delaying the result for 2 days. Why do they call it a record? It's like Bird of the Century. Is there another record they had to beat from last century? I don't know. Toki said thousands of votes had to be discarded as fraudulent, including 40,000 votes cast by a single person for a penguin. Another person from Pennsylvania cast 3,403 votes of their choice, with one arriving every 3 seconds. Following news that Oliver's pick had beaten out the competition, New Zealand's Prime Minister-elect congratulated him on social media. The Putekateki eats its own feathers to line its stomach and then vomits to expel parasites, makes grunting and growling sounds, and engages in mating dances such as the weed dance, where the birds offer each other water weed, and the ghostly penguin, where they rise chest to chest while walking on water. Dude, they can walk on water. That's good enough for me. That's it. Short and sweet. News of the day. And to you.
That's good enough for me. That's a lot of news stories, but I think it was just as long as my Czech coverage. Okay. Lots of stuff going on today. This article from Fleur Launsbach on NOS is about how we've discovered maybe who killed the princes. For centuries, no one knew what happened to the 2 princes in the Tower of London. Rumor has it in that both boys, Edward 12 and Richard 9, were murdered by their uncle Richard III. He is said to have murdered the sons of the previous king, his brother Edward IV, to strengthen his own claim to the throne. The two boys disappeared from history in 1483 after being taken to the Tower of London. A common theory dramatized by Shakespeare is that they were suffocated with their bed pillows in the dead of night on their uncle's orders. Historian Philippa Langley, who also found the skeleton of Richard III under a car park in Leicester. I'm Richard III, famous British king.
I remember that.
And we lost where we buried him. Launched her book and documentary this weekend, claiming something very different. The two famous princes are said not to have been murdered at all, but rather taken safely somewhere in Europe. This would mean that the skeletons found under a staircase in the tower in the 17th century are not of the two boys at all. That's already been disproven. I've seen a video about this theory already. It's already been disproven that those skeletons don't even match the same era, right? Aren't even the same ages. Stuff like that. Like, that's not them. Those bones, buried in a stately tomb in Westminster Abbey, have never been tested for DNA requests to do so have been rejected by Buckingham Palace and the Church of England. See? So they're not. Yeah. In her new research, Langley claims that the princes were housed separately in Europe and years later tried to retake the English throne. She bases her findings on documents found by researchers in European archives. The main archive documents were found by Dutch researchers, the Dutch Research Group, which includes Jean Roofstra, Nathaniel Beekendal, and Zoe Maula. One of the archive documents is said to be a witness statement found in the Gelders archives. In it, the youngest prince, Richard of York, is said to describe in detail how he was smuggled out of the tower at the age of 9. Experts have determined that the document was indeed written in the correct period. I was secretly taken to a room where the lions were kept, the statement said. Lord Howard came to me and encouraged me. He ordered the guards to leave them and then brought 2 other men to me. Their names were Henry Percy and Thomas Percy. The letter continues, they solemnly swore that they would protect and hide me until several years were over. They shaved my hair and put me in a shabby and dull shirt, and we went to St. Catherine's ship dock. The prince, with his head shaved, dressed in unrecognizable clothing, left by ship for Boulogne-sur-Mer and later traveled to Portugal. When he came out, he was said to have been recognized by relatives in European courts based on certain physical characteristics. Another document from an archive in Dresden promises to repay 30,000 florins once the prince invades England to reclaim the throne. The fleet was assembled in Zeeland, but left Texel. Texel is one of the little small sandbar islands north of the Netherlands. This is supported by various documents found in archives by Dutch Research Group. Richard of York's invasion failed. He was defeated and captured by Henry Tudor. According to Langley, the newfound documents prove that he was forced to sign a false statement under the name Perkin Warbeck in the Tower of London, and he was hanged in 1499. Another French archival document from 1487 records the payment of weapons for elite troops for Edward, the elder of the 2 princelings, who would have needed those weapons to reclaim the English throne at the Battle of Stoke Field. He was also defeated and went down in history under an assumed name as Lambert Simnel. These false identities fit into the Tudor narrative, which maintained that these young pretenders to the throne, who had disappeared in 1483, were no longer alive. According to Philippa Langley, the unearthed archive documents show that real-life story of the disappeared princes. Despite the new plays, some historians still believe in the famous dramatized story that Shakespeare wrote about 100 years later, in which the boys were put to death by order of their hunchback, bloodthirsty uncle. Langley emphasizes that history is written by the victors. According to her, there's every reason to doubt that story. So, there you go. We may have discovered what happened to the princes who did not die at the young age of 9 and 12, but instead died at a younger age of probably like 20 or 30 as they tried to retake the British throne from the Tudors, which were post War of the Roses, so they were not ready for another War of the Throne. They're like, we're good. Take them out. We're out of here. You lost your claim. So that is our wacky news for today. Your story.
My favorite documentary is one where they find there was a complete fraud. It was actual king, and they go and locate the actual king of England if they'd actually followed the actual lineage. And he's some guy living in Australia who actually should be king right now. Yeah, so that's fascinating. I couldn't tell you the name of the documentary. Okay, so back on to history news. Today marks the 60th anniversary of the assassination of JFK in Dallas, which we've been to, visited the plaza. And the president, a lot of people don't know this, but the car, the limo in that event was reused after they cleaned it up and resurfaced it. The Kennedy presidential limo has been on, this is on mlive.com. The Kennedy presidential limo has been on permanent display in Michigan for decades. Most people can recall where they were on November 22nd, 1963, when the 35th President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, was assassinated while riding through Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas. As we remember the 60th anniversary of his death, MLive takes a look at the presidential limo, which has resided in Michigan for decades. The 1961 Lincoln Continental, codenamed X100, was built at a plant in Wixom, Michigan for $200,000. It's one of the most popular historical items on display at the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn in Metro Detroit, where it has been for 45 years since the museum acquired it in 1978. It first went on display in 1981. What may strike people as most when they see the limo is that it doesn't look like it does in the Zapruder film. That's because it was put back into service with numerous modifications. The vehicle was originally a blue convertible with removable plastic roof panels. After the assassination, the limo was painted black, and titanium plating was added along with bullet-resistant glass, a permanent roof, and filtered heating and cooling systems to protect from poisonous gas. The limo was put back into service and stayed in service at the White House until 1977, where it was retired, I guess, by Jimmy Carter. It's astonishing, said Matt Anderson, curator of the transportation at the Henry Ford. You would assume that they would have either destroyed the car or locked it up in a warehouse somewhere. It was a matter of practical expediency. Well, no shit, you spent $200,000 in that car to start with. And that was 1950s dollars. They needed a new, early 60s. They needed a new parade car for the president, and the term was faster to rebuild this than start from scratch. Anderson added that President Lyndon B. Johnson, who was in the presidential motorcade on that day of the assassination and succeeded Kennedy, was the one who asked the car to be painted black. Although the other presidential parade cars were built in the late 60s and early 70s, the JFK limo was used occasionally by Presidents Johnson, Nixon, Ford, and Carter. The Kennedy limo is one of the numerous presidential limos on the permanent display at the Henry Ford. The museum does not have any special plans for November 22nd, 2023, but does expect the presidential limo area to be very busy with people paying tribute to President Kennedy. So while it is the presidential limo, a lot of stuff's been replaced. Who knows how much of the original parts are even there? So even though I'm sure a lot of the body and frame is still the same. The skin's been replaced with titanium. They've added things. So while it's the presidential limo used in that day, how much of that actual car was actually there at the time? It's kind of like the joke. There's a comedian who made a joke years ago. He used to juggle. He used to juggle axe, a meat cleaver, and a machete. His name was Michael Davis, right? He'd juggle those three things. He'd make a joke before he started juggling. Hold up the axe and he'd go, "This is the original axe used by George Washington to chop down the cherry tree. I've replaced the handle and the blade." But it occupies the same air. That's basically what it is. It's not really the car. It's just occupying the same area. The car would have if it was there, right? The tires are different. Merely everything is different. Maybe a few things. Okay, your story.
Well, it reminds me of that's also a famous philosophy question. I can't remember the name of the philosophy question, but it's basically about a ship. And if you replace all parts of a ship, is it still the same ship? That's the famous, I think, what he's referencing as well. It's a very famous philosophy question. And yeah, so
What I'm referencing.
is that really the car? If you replace every single thing about that, what made it the car? No. That's my argument.
Yes, again, parts of the chassis and frame are probably still there. You can't eliminate that, so yeah.
Different engine block. Okay.
Maybe, probably.
In culture news, David Morquand is going to tell us who the sexiest bald man alive of 2023 is and why Stanley Tucci isn't on the list. He's very angry about this. And that's why it's my wacky news segment, because this is quite wacky that he made a Stanley Tucci standing paragraph. A grave injustice has been made in the poll to determine the sexiest bald man of 2023. A poll to determine the sexiest bald man of 2023 is proving divisive, not least in the Euronews culture department. Oh, so they're all talking about it at Euronews. They're like, what the hell is this list? This year, Prince William has been named the sexiest bald man alive, according to a new study based on Google searches, even though he's not even fully bald. Boo!
What's that?
That was my own editorial. Okay, the study was carried out by a marketing agency, Reboot, who's examining the frequency of search names of bald men alongside their net worth, height, vocal attractiveness, how do you measure that? Shine factor, so how shiny their head is, and the golden ratio, giving each contender a score 0 out of 10. I can't believe that Prince William has any of those. The golden ratio? Really? He does not look very, in my opinion, he does not look very good. He has a weird nose, you know, his eyebrows too low on his face, he has a long head. This guy is the sexiest bald man alive. Okay. The last bit has a little to do with the Fibonacci sequence and is more about Reboot inputting photos of each celebrity into a computer algorithm, which was able to identify prominent features, otherwise known as facial landmarks. Okay, so we're just training an AI, and that AI still needs some more training, I think. Prince William topped the list with a score of 9.88, ahead of actors like Vin Diesel. Really? That's his editorial, put in parentheses, really, with 2 question marks, parentheses. So I don't think he thinks Vin Diesel should be second place. I think Vin Diesel is better looking than than William. Jason Statham, Samuel L. Jackson, and Amazon boss Jeff Bezos came at number 5, ahead of Michael Jordan, Dwayne Johnson, we expected higher, and Shamar Moore, Shaquille O'Neal, and Terry Crews. I think that some of these people are better looking. Yeah, Shamir Moore is better looking than all these people, I would argue. He's the most conventionally attractive of all the bald men. On the top 10 or whatever. And no mention of Stanley Tucci, the sophisticated American treasure actor and host extraordinaire of life-affirming food and travel documentary series Stanley Tucci Searching for Italy. We demand a recount, and we're not the only ones. Check out some of the reactions from social media. Stanley Tucci isn't sweating over a pot of al dente risotto on TikTok daily for this kind of slander. Limey sycophants coping and seething at Tucci's supremacy, trying to tear down a real king. This is the holy pantheon. It is not up for discussion. Oh, it's like 4 different bald men. To be fair, Tucci did secure the second spot last year, with Vin Diesel at number 1 spot, which is nothing short of a travesty. Speaking of travesties, where on earth is the ever-glorious Mark Strong, pray tell? This again? When Mark Strong was right there? And this is all very upsetting. Who do you think is the sexiest, baldest man of all time?
Isn't the living person?
It doesn't have to be a living person.
But the context says the sexiest living bald man. It has to be living. It can't be, like Curly from the Three Stooges.
Did it say? No, it just said.
Yeah, it said living.
Oh no, it does say sexiest bald man alive. You're right. So I guess.
Yeah, it says alive.
But I'm asking you of real time. Who do you think is the sexiest bald man? I don't care if they're alive.
Well, then it's Curly. Right now, living, It'd be that Teamster guy that was going to fight last week in the Senate. That guy, he was bald. He was ready to throw down. He was ready to throw hands in the Senate.
Oh, the guy who was on the, who's getting...
The Teamster president. Yeah, I can't think of his name. Yeah. You know, that stupid...
He was like, yeah.
Senator
okay, stand up then.
Go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go then. He came ready to fight.
Oh,
Let's go, man.
He had the really good clapback, which is like, I don't like you because you're talking, you just described yourself. Yeah, I thought that was funny when he said that.
Don't take no shit from no bullies, man. They want to get their ass kicked. They secretly do want their ass kicked. So there you go. There's your sexiest bald man, that guy. I'll tell you his name in a minute. Maybe you can find his name. But I'll be looking at what happened this day in history.
Okay.
In 1718, the pirate Blackbeard was killed off the coast of North Carolina on this day. In 1819, Victorian English novelist George Eliot, who developed the method for psychological analysis of characteristic of modern fiction, was known for such works as Middlemarch, was born on this day. Of course, George Eliot was a woman. 1943, Lebanon proclaimed its independence from France. However, it did not become wholly independent until 1946. 1975, Juan Carlos became King of Spain 2 days after Generalissimo Francisco Franco died. He is still dead. 1986, with a second-round knockout of Trevor Berbick, the 20-year-old Mike Tyson became the youngest heavyweight champion in boxing history. Also a bald man. 1990, Margaret Thatcher announced her resignation as Prime Minister after a split occurred in the ranks of the Conservative Party. Margaret Thatcher, not a bald man. 1994, Mount Marapi on the island of Java erupted, killing 64 people. Wow, a volcano. We never thought that would happen. That thing that was rumbling all the time erupted. Wow. 1995, Pixar's Toy Story, the first entirely computer-animated feature-length film, was released and became a critical and commercial hit. To infinity and beyond. 2005, German politician Angela Merkel was sworn in as the country's chancellor, becoming the first woman to hold the post. Not bald. Featured event, of course, is the assassination of the United States President John F. Kennedy, the most notorious political murder in recent American history, when JFK, 35th President of the United States, was shot and killed in Dallas, Texas, while riding an open car. Also not bald. Charles de Gaulle, President of France, I think probably had a little tiny bit of hair since he was in the military, was born on this day in 1890. There's your featured birthday, Charles de Gaulle's birthday. Also died famously on this day was Aldous Huxley, whose death will never be remembered because he died the same day as JFK. Also born on this day, besides Charles de Gaulle, Terry Gilliam, American director and member of Monty Python's Flying Circus. In 1967, Mark Ruffalo was born. 1984, November 22nd, 1984 is the birthday of Scarlett Johansson. And Oscar Pistorius, famous legless athlete from South Africa and murderer, was born on this day in 1986. And what national day is it? What day is it today? Not too many days today. It's National Cranberry Relish Day. I've never had cranberry relish, but I've had cranberries plenty of times. It's National Jukebox Day, which is traditionally the day before Thanksgiving. And it's National Tie One On Day. No, that doesn't mean get drunk. It's all about tying on your apron so you can cook all of that fun food that everybody's gonna gorge themselves on tomorrow on American Thanksgiving. And that's the news from the United States and all the damage I can do for coffee on November 22nd, 2023.
And this is Allison from the Netherlands, hoping to see you tomorrow for whatever happens on Thursday. And here is your mic drop moment.
I was shocked by the death of Zim and knew. I'd met Zim with Justice Douglas many years ago. He was extraordinary character, while he became increasingly difficult in the last months. Nevertheless, over a 10-year period, he'd held his country together, maintained its independence under very adverse conditions. The way he was killed made it particularly abhorrent. The question now is whether the generals can stay together and build a stable government, or whether Saigon will turn on public opinion in Saigon, the intellectuals, students, etc., will turn on this government as repressive and undemocratic in the not-too-distant future.
Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.